Who is God? Pretty good question. How do we answer it? How about this question? Who are you? Now, who would be best suited to answer that question? That would be you. Good. And you know more about you than anyone else does. So you would be the best authority to answer the question, who are you? Well, the same holds true for God. To answer the question, who is God, we want to let him speak for himself. And he does in his word. Psalm 33:11 says that these words that we find in the Bible are the thoughts of God's heart to all generations. If you tell honestly what is in your heart about you, then people see who you are. Well, God cannot lie, it says in Titus chapter 1. He cannot lie. He cannot go against his righteous character. God introduces his name to us in Genesis chapter 2, verse 4, the first place that we ever find in all English Bibles, little capital letters, L-O-R-D. They're kind of cute. Anyway, they're little capital letters. And that should arrest our attention because that's different than we normally would write. And it arrests our attention more than 6,800 times in the Old Testament. And it's the Hebrew word Yahweh, which we would spell Y-A-H-W-E-H. And it is the name of God. Now, I don't know your name because I can't see you. All I can see is that camera. But your name means something, and your name was given you by your parents, probably with a purpose, perhaps with a name that you would live up to, that kind of thing. So each name has a meaning of some kind, and God gives us the meaning of his name, but not until Exodus chapter 34. Many, many, many centuries after Genesis chapter 2, verse 4, which is the first verse where we see the word Yahweh, which is the proper name of God. It's not until Exodus 34:6 that he defines his name for Moses. And so let's see what God says so that we can begin to answer the question, who is God? And in Exodus 34, Moses has gone up the mountain again. He has 2 new tablets because he broke the other 2, and you can read all that in the book of Exodus. But he goes back up Mount Sinai, and it says that God passed in front of Moses, proclaiming, Yahweh, Yahweh, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining mercy. NIV says love. I believe mercy is a better translation. Maintaining mercy to thousands and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Wow! That's the kind of God I would like to hang out with. That's the kind of person I would like to hang out with. The rest of the verse says, and I am also a just God, and justice requires judgment, and I will judge wickedness and evil in due season. But Exodus 34:6 is a verse to put in your memory bank because it is the first place in Scripture where God defines the name he uses. Now in Genesis 1:1, perhaps you're familiar, it says, in the beginning, God, with a lot of reverb, because that's the Hebrew word Elohim, which means the Creator. That's my impression of reverb. And all through Genesis 1, and God said, and God said, and God said. It's Elohim all the way through. Then you come to chapter 2, verse 4, which is where chapter 2 should start. Someone went and put a giant 2, chapter 2, right before verse 4. But if you read the first 3 verses of Genesis 2 in English Bibles, they should obviously go in chapter 1 so they conclude the 7-day chronology. What God is doing from Genesis 2:4 onward is coming back to what happened on the 6th of the 7th days, and that's when he created humans, 1 male, 1 female, his crowning achievement. And so he's going to come back in Genesis chapter 2, beginning in verse 4, and begin to elaborate on what he had already mentioned over here briefly as to what happened on the 6th day when he made Adam, and later the same day made the woman. So we get over there to Genesis chapter 2, verse 4, and because the word Yahweh, some people call it Jehovah, talks about God's covenant relationship with man. And in the Old Testament, we find a number of functional titles attached to the Yahweh name, like Yahweh Rapha in Exodus. I am the Lord who heals. There's also, I am the Lord of hosts. I am the Lord who sanctifies. I am the Lord our shepherd in the 23rd Psalm. So what those are indicating is that God was wearing many hats in the Old Testament. You might recall what Moses said to him when God found him out in the desert when he was 80 years old after 40 years with the sheep. He had left Egypt at age 40 after murdering someone and hightailed it into the desert, hung out with the sheep for 40 years. God came to him and said, in essence, this is the Clef Note version, yo, Mo, go. Anyway, go back to Egypt and get my people out of bondage. And of course, Moses is a type of Christ. But what did Moses say? Well, who am I going to say has sent me? And God, in essence, most Bibles read, I am that I am, or I will be what I will be. In other words, all the pagans had countless gods, the frog god, the wheat god, the corn god, the beer god, all of these things. And what was unique about the Israelites, they only had one God. Furthermore, he was invisible. And so God was saying to Moses, chill. I will be for you whoever I need to be. If you need healing, I'll heal you. If you need deliverance, I'll deliver you. If you need me to fight for you, I'll fight for you. If you need me to provide food for you, I'll provide food for you. And so we see that God wore all the hats. Once Jesus came along, and we'll talk about that in the next one of these little videos that I'm going to do, Jesus wore all of the hats that God wore. And Jesus is named after his Father, and I'll do that in the next one. But the last verse I want to share with you is Psalm 31:5, which is a really interesting verse because it's one that Jesus quotes part of on the cross with his dying words were from Psalm 31:5, because much of the Old Testament, virtually all of it, not every verse, but the whole point of the Old Testament is pointing toward Jesus Christ, the coming Messiah. And Psalm 31:5 says, into your hands I commit my spirit. Redeem me, O Yahweh, the God of truth. So there's another very significant aspect of God. He's the God of truth. And Jesus chose to quote or to speak from this verse as he saw it in its prophetic context. Into your hands I commit my spirit. Jesus stepped into the abyss of death, trusting God to raise him from the dead. And why did Jesus have the faith to trust him? Because he knew that God was the God of truth, and that every promise God had made to Jesus in the Old Testament about raising him from the dead would come to pass. Jesus showed us that God is the God of truth, and that is the God you can count on to back up every word that he says to you today.